Okay, hopefully this is recording. And all right, so three theories of emotion: James Lange, Cannon-Bard, and two-factor. It's also called Schachter two-factor. They all kind of the difference between all of them is the order in which they believe emotion occurs. James Lange is not really considered to be legitimate anymore, but what James Lange says is that emotion is simply the product of a physiological response. Okay? You see something that is funny, whatever I can't think of what a physiological response would be. We'll just use instead the example I have on here. You see something that's scary. The thing that is scary, all right, the stimulus causes your heart to start pounding, and then because your heart is pounding, you feel afraid. Okay, so it basically says that one specific physiological response is one specific physiological response correlates with one specific emotion. What we know now is obviously that sorry, I just completely lost my train of thought. What we know now is that obviously, like, one physiological change can have a lot of different emotions with it. Your heart pounding does not necessarily mean you're afraid. Your heart can pound for a lot of different reasons. The difference, so people a lot of times get confused between James Lange and two-factor theory. And I wish I had let me see what I could do here. If I could bring up a whiteboard. So James Lange, it basically says that it is unconscious. Okay, so it's just like with that, there's no cognition involved in it. Your heart's pounding, therefore that just makes you feel the emotion of being afraid. And sorry, my computer is going very, very slow. So the James Lange, all right, so we got the bear, heart pounds, and because of that, you feel fear. All right, the difference between that and two-factor theory is two-factor theory says that it is not simply the physiological response, it is the physiological response combined with our interpretation of the physiological response, what they call a cognitive label. So with this one, it says you see a bear, your heart starts to pound, but in between your heart pounding and you feeling the emotion, there is the cognitive label, the interpretation, the understanding of what your heart pounding means. Your heart starts pounding, and you think, oh, my heart is pounding because I am afraid of this bear, therefore you feel fear. All right. With James Lange, that cognitive label doesn't exist. It's just your heart pounds, and then because of that, you feel fear. This one says, all right, so we go with the most likely explanation for whatever the physiological arousal is. We use the example of if you go for a run and then as you get home from the run, your boyfriend or girlfriend surprises you, your heart's pounding, you may feel like extreme attraction towards your boyfriend or girlfriend, because rather than attribute your heart pounding to just the fact that you were just running, you may say, oh, my heart is pounding because I am in love with this person. Okay, because I'm feeling really strong attraction. So that is that's the main difference between those two. Okay, with Canon Bard then says the thing you need to remember with Canon Bard is that sorry, this is going to be annoying, but I don't think there's any way for me to clear it off quicker. Canon Bard says it's the simultaneous. So you see the bear, all right, and at the same time, okay, you feel fear, all right, and your heart pounds, okay? That the thalamus, I don't know why I just drew a circle there, all right, the thalamus basically routes it to the cortex and to the autonomic nervous system at the same time, okay? Just think of just when the key word for this one is simultaneous or at the same time. Okay. All right. So those are the theories of emotion. Empirically derived test. Okay. This was a term that we also had back in Unit 5. An empirically derived test. Let me see. Let me find it. Empirically derived means that it is based on evidence. It is based on empirical information. Empirical means like they've found it using scientific study. But what an empirically derived test is a test like the MMPI or the Myers-Briggs to an extent, where what they will do is they will have groups of questions that all sort of correlate with each other. That uses factor analysis. And so they look at clusters of questions to see if certain questions indicate certain personality types. Okay, so for instance, they found that when asked about reading the newspaper, people that are depressed actually tend to answer about reading the newspaper that they only read the newspaper for the comics. All right, and so it's a random correlation, but they found that certain answering questions a certain way correlates with a certain type of personality. Okay, so that's an empirically derived test. Oh yeah, thank you, Mick. I just figured that out. Id, ego, super ego. Okay, these are the Freudian dimensions of personality. So Freud basically said that our personality is made up of three different parts. The part of our personality that we are born with is called the id. This is like all of our like animalistic urges. It's very, very basic. It is simply looking for satisfaction with everything. Think about babies. Babies, they want immediate gratification with absolutely everything. Okay, that is the id. The id is not concerned with consequences. The id is only concerned with getting what it wants right now. Freud said that as we get older, we push the id further into our unconscious as we develop what is called our ego, right, which is the part of our personality that everybody sees, right, that looks to satisfy the id's urges in a realistic manner. Okay, so let's say that you want to let's say, you're in college and you have the option between it's a Thursday night and your friends are having a party, but you got to study for a test the next day. All right, the id is going to say, screw the test. I want to go have fun. I want to go to the party. Okay, the ego has to find a way to balance that. And so, what the ego, which is just the sort of the normal part of our personality, would say, all right, we'll study for a little while, and then we go to the party. Okay, it works off the reality principle. How do I satisfy the id's urges in a realistic manner? The last part of our personality to develop is what is called the superego. The superego is our moral principles. Freud said that we develop this once we identify with our parent that is the same sex as us. Okay, so boys, once they identify with their fathers, start to develop their morals. The superego is focused on always being good. It's very repressive. It's very it's like I always equate it to like a Puritan. And so, as we get older, the ego has to balance this battle between the id and the superego. Think about this as the proverbial, like angel on one shoulder and devil on the other. Okay. Hierarchy of needs. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is just the theory of Maslow's theory of motivation that says that we have all. I mean, if you just look it up, it's pretty straightforward. Like at the bottom of the hierarchy are our basic needs. At the top of the hierarchy are much more higher level needs. And we cannot satisfy. We're not going to be able to satisfy higher level needs, like needs for like motivation for achievement, belonging, and finally like self actualization, becoming the best version of ourselves, until these lower level basic needs are met. So we basically have to climb up the ladder, climb up the hierarchy. Id short for anything. Id is just id. Id means it in Greek or Latin. Thematic apperception test. I went over this. Thematic apperception test is a type of projective tests, which are used for the psychoanalytic perspective, where it is. Let me look up an example. Like here's an example. This is a TAT right here. So what it is they would just show you an ambiguous image where you don't really know, there's no context to it. And then you have to make up a story about it. And the story that you make up shines some sort of light on your unconscious processes. So if the story is sexual, maybe you have like hidden sexual urges. If it's aggressive, you might be more aggressive, so on and so forth. It's supposed to reflect your unconscious. Okay, what other questions? I got to the Ari at the bottom of the chat. Reciprocal determinism. Reciprocal determinism is a social cognitive perspective of personality, where it basically says, what the social cognitive perspective says is that our personality is a combination of how we interact with our environment and how our environment interacts with us. So it essentially says that personality is, what is it? Who can tell? What does the word reciprocal mean? Vivana? If you're talking, I can't hear you. Can anybody hear? Oh, weird. I wonder why I can't hear her. Vivana, say something now. Hmm. All right. Well, weird. Yeah, just type it in the chat because I can't hear you. Okay. Well, all right. Speed it up. All right, when someone does something for you, you feel obligated to do the same for them. Yeah, basically, like reciprocal means like giving back and forth. So, what reciprocal determinism says is that our personality is a combination of our own personal behavior, all right, our cognition, and our environment, and like all of these things interact back and forth with one another. We seek out certain environments. Basically, says that we seek out certain environments that fit us, and then we affect that environment in a way as well. Think about when think about if you're when you're in a class with a teacher that is getting okay with a t if as a t if a t if a class won't stop talking, okay, and the teacher starts to get frustrated. All right, depending on who the teacher is, sometimes kids will actually like enjoy that. And so as the teacher gets frustrated, the kids start messing around even more. All right, and so the teacher gets madder and madder, and then that in turn makes the class more and more wild and more talkative and whatnot. All right, and so these things are, it's like it basically says that the environment that we are in affects our personality, and our personality affects the environment that we are in. Social exchange theory, I mean, kind of, but this is just saying the personality is in a bunch of is interacting factors between all of these different things. Okay. Let me see. Free association. Free association is just talk. It's a psychoanalytic technique where the idea is you will just the more you talk, the more you are going to you could reveal something about your unconscious, but around unconscious urges through what are called Freudian slips, which is where like the unconscious kind of pops out all of a sudden. The Freudian slip is like if you've ever called like a teacher mom or dad before, like that would be considered a Freudian slip. Okay. Big five a vocab word? Big Five is just a personality test. It's the most legitimate personality inventory. A personality inventory is what is used in trait theory, where it uses an empirically derived test to measure to isolate certain personality traits. With the Big Five, Big Five looks at five different personality traits. The five of them are openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Okay, you can remember that, but you can just remember ocean. Okay, and so it looks at, if you look up the Big Five online, you can find an online version of it. It is considered to be the best personality assessment. It's pretty good. If I remember to, I have a short one that's pretty good that I can send out. Okay, collective unconscious. Collective unconscious is a very, very vague idea, I guess you could say. Really, all you need to know about the collective unconscious is the definition. You would never be asked anything more than that. But the collective unconscious is an idea from a neo Freudian named Carl Jung, who is probably the second most famous psychologist of all time. Jung, however you pronounce his last name, was one of Freud's proteges, and then they kind of became enemies later on. But what Jung believed was that the human race has shared memories. Basically, we have like genetically um, imprinted memories of things in our unconscious, a shared unconsciousness where we all have these shared memories of the human race. Evidence for this, there is some evidence for this. It's kind of strange, but the idea of archetypes, especially in like literature and storytelling. If you look back at the earliest recorded history, and the earliest storytelling, or earliest recorded history is from about 5,000 years ago. If we look back at that in the early stories, like the Epic of Gilgamesh and Canterbury Tales, uh, blanking on what some of the other ones are, but they all have like the same themes, and they all have the same types of characters. And these are like, think about these stories that all came from societies that never had any contact with each other, but they all told the same types of stories with the same archetypes. All right, that would Jung believed that that was part of our collective unconscious. All right, what other terms do we want to go over? Um, Psychosexual stages. Psychosexual stages are Freud's stages of childhood development. They are oral, anal, phallic, latent, and genital. What Freud believed. So if we think back to Eric Erikson and the 8 stages of psychosocial development. At each stage of Erickson's psychosocial development, what was at the core of each stage of his stages of psychosocial development? Anybody remember? Like at each stage, there is what? Just answer in the chat. No, not moral development. That's Kohlberg. Yep, yeah, Brooke. That's right. A conflict. Okay, and remember that one is like social. With Freud, Freud says that in childhood we have these different, what he called psychosexual conflicts, and at each age range there is some sort of, the focus is on, the id's focus is on a certain area of the body, and where they get, Freud believed we get sexual pleasure from. So in the first stage, what's called the oral stage, Freud believed that we get some sort of sexual pleasure, or fulfill some sort of sexual needs through putting stuff in our mouth. So like breastfeeding, little kids put everything in their mouth, sucking on your thumb, all of those things. While Piaget says they put them all in their mouth because that's how they learn about the world. Freud says that that is where we're putting it in our mouth because we need to um, we need to fill up our libido, which is our sex drive, is focused on that area. And if you don't fulfill those needs, then it results in what is called a fixation throughout life. So, people that maybe don't have their oral needs fulfilled as a child might develop what is called an oral fixation, which is like those of you that like bite your nails, chew on things all the time, chew gum all the time, even like overeating, being sarcastic, being verbally aggressive. All of these things indicate an oral fixation where you're using your mouth to try to get some sort of some sort of unconscious sexual pleasure. Okay, so that's kind of the idea behind the psychosexual stages. Oral stage, it's the mouth. Anal stage is getting sexual pleasure from relieving the bowels or holding in poop. Phallic stage is around the genital area as a symbol of power. That is where the Oedipus complex comes into play, which is where around the age of 5 or so, Freud believed that little boys were sexually infatuated with their mother and hated their father and wanted to get rid of their father because they were jealous of him for being able to sexually possess their mother. Um, Freud took this from his own experience. I don't know. But it's funny with Freud, there is like a grain of truth with all this. If you think about like little like kids around this age, most kids around this age are closer with their opposite sex parent. Boys tend to be closer to their mother around this age, and girls tend to be closer to their father. Now, it's probably just some sort of developmental thing or whatnot. Freud added the level of perversion to it. There is the opposite of it, what is called the electric complex, which is where we believe that girls at this age uh, were had sexual desire for their father and wanted to get rid of their mother. Okay. All right. What other vocab terms do we want to go over? Psychoanalytic versus psychodynamic. That is psychoanalytic is more focused on the unconscious and like more focused on sex. Psychodynamic is focused on like the dynamics of how the past influences us. Focused on the and importance of childhood experiences. Psychoanalysis is mainly the type of therapy that this is referred to as. I don't think I'll check and see on the vocab quiz, but if I put either one of these on there, I will take the other one off as an option for that question, but I don't think I did. I tried to choose, guys. I tried to choose the terms that I thought were like the easiest. All right. What other? Can we go over all the key names? Take up too much time. Key names are not on the quiz. But Maslow, we know who that is. Kinsey did he famous. How many questions on the vocab quiz? How many questions are on every single vocab quiz? Good. Glad you're relieved, Rustam. Can anybody answer? How many questions are on every single vocab quiz? 30. 30. Yes, always 30. Can somebody unmute themselves again and see if I'm confused as to why my speakers aren't working. Hello. Oh, thank you, Rustum. All right, I got them working now. Masters and Johnson is the sexual response cycle. Cannon is Cannon Bard. Schachter is two-factor theory. Zajonc and Ledoux are two other theories of emotion that we didn't go over, what's called the high road and the low road. Lazarus as well, kind of added on to Schachter. Ekman is emotional expression and lie detection, what are called micro expressions. Hans Celia is general adaptation syndrome, which is stress. Seligman is positive psychology. and learned helplessness. Freud is psychoanalysis. Adler is a neo-Freudian who studied birth order, and he was very interested in the inferiority complex. Um, Karen Horney is a neo-Freudian. She opposed Freud's idea of penis envy. What he believed that little girls were jealous of males having a penis, um, because a penis is what is called a phallic symbol. Which, does anybody know what a phallic symbol is? No. A phallic symbol is something that's meant to resemble a penis, like a sword, the Washington Monument, things like that. But there are symbols, the symbols of power. She disagreed with this. She actually said that the boys had womb envy. Jung, Neo-Freudian, collective unconscious, Carl Rogers, client-centered therapy, McRae and Costa, big five personality inventory, and then Bandura is the father of the social cognitive perspective. Do they ask about people? Yeah, they do. I mean, that's why we do key names. I wouldn't spend a ton of time for the AP exam studying key names, but they do ask about people. I mean, it's more than likely that the people they would ask about would be ones like Freud, Jung, B.F. Skinner, Pavlov, John Watson, Albert Bandura, names that have come up a lot throughout the year. But I mean, anything is fair game. That's why we do the key names, because while they don't ask a ton about them, they do uh, ask about them. Usually, in as I mean, they're going to be asked as to what they are connected with. And maybe if we have time, well, we maybe in one of the review sessions, because I'm going to try to do two more review sessions. Um, Maybe I'll go through and just all like the list of all the important people that we can think of, and just basically what they are associated with. Okay, so they're going to be a key names on the FRQ. I mean, guys, you're asking me like I know these things. I I have rarely ever seen key names on an FRQ other than associating it with with their theories. So it's usually a name associated with the theory, but I don't know what's going to be on the. You all, I just want to make this clear again, because I know I've said this a lot, but I don't think people listen. I do not make the AP exam. That is College Board. Okay. I do not make it. I have no idea. Best I can do is guess and give you thoughts of what I think could possibly will be on it. We know like what percentage of each unit it will be, but beyond that, we don't know what it's going to ask. Maybe question Freud's mentality even more. Yeah, Freud was a weirdo. Okay. All right. What other vocab terms before we move on to overall review? Okay. Any other vocab terms that we are unsure of? Okay. All right. All right. So now we are going to move on, I guess, to the list of confusing terms. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go get another seltzer. Okay, so I know I didn't do this with A Day, but with I know we went over so with B Day, we went over all the way through um, Broca's area versus Wernicke's area. So those of you, I mean, you can let's just start there. Um, let's see what is going to be the best way for me to do this. All right. So we're starting on the one here. So the one that I will go over that we've already gone over with B Day, because we didn't ever cover this. Oh, sorry. In class, the lateral hypothalamus versus the ventromedial hypothalamus. Okay, so as we remember, the hypothalamus is involved in drives, sex drive. The other thing it's very involved in is hunger. Okay, the difference between the lateral and the ventromedial hypothalamus. The lateral hypothalamus is part of the hypothalamus that sends hunger signals. It triggers the release of a hormone called, or a neurotransmitter called orexin. All right. And the ventromedial hypothalamus sends satiety signals to the stomach. Satiety is feeling full through the release of a neurotransmitter called anorexin. Okay, so that is literally all you need to. The lateral hypothalamus, when if stimulated, will make you eat. The ventromedial hypothalamus, when stimulated, will make you never feel hungry. If you remember from Unit 2, when we talked about the hypothalamus, we watched the video of the girl that had Prader-Willi syndrome, where no matter how much she ate, she would never feel full. That is because these parts of her hypothalamus simply do not work at all. Oh my God. Sorry, my dad just sent me a text that's like 5 pages long. Okay. All right. Afferent versus efferent neurons. Okay. Can anybody tell me the difference between these two? Yep. Sensory versus motor. Okay. Afferent neurons are sensory neurons, and efferent are motor neurons. Okay. Brain, body. Okay. Yep. Afferent are in the peripheral nervous system. Okay. Do we remember the mnemonic? Same. Yep. Same is sensory, afferent, motor, effort. Make sure that you know that. They love using these terms on the AP exam. These come up a lot. Efferent is in the central. Well, they're both in the peripheral. Actually, in the central nervous system, we just have what are called interneurons. Okay, so actually, neither of these are in the central nervous system. All right, assimilation versus accommodation. So these are the similarity between these two. All right, these are both with Piaget. All right, both involved with schemas. No, neither of them are in the central nerve. Oh, sorry, I just answered that. Okay, Piaget, both of these involved with schemas, but assimilation is when new information fits into a pre-existing schema. Okay, so the schema stays the same. We can remember that as SS, stays the same. Accommodation is when new information, whoa, crap. New information makes you have to alter a schema. Okay, it causes change. Okay, so when you accommodate a schema, it's because you've learned something new. When you assimilate something into a schema, it fits into your pre-existing knowledge. That is when it stays the same. Concrete operations versus formal operations. These are both going along with Piaget and the stages of cognitive development. And concrete operations is ages about age 7 to 11. They understand conservation and they can start to think logically about real events and things. Okay, concrete, they can think about real things. Formal operations is age 12 in through adulthood. Right. Here's where they can start to think abstractly. Okay, start thinking of hypothetical situations and whatnot. Right, sensation is the process of sensory information being carried to the brain. And the difference between these two, sensation is it coming up here, perception is our understanding of the world around us, how we perceive, how, like, if you smell, like, a smell to one person might smell really good while it might smell really bad to somebody else. You're still smelling the same thing, um, but it's your perception. It doesn't have to do with top down and bottom up. Yeah, yep. Rods versus cones. Okay, these are both of these are referred to as what? Photoreceptors. Thank you, Emma. Photoreceptors. And where are rods and cones all located? In the retina. Okay, so that's the similarity there with rods. Rods allow us to see what? Black and white. Yep. Okay. Black and white, dim lighting. Yep. Okay. And peripheral vision. All right. These are on the periphery of the retina, which is why we don't perceive colors or detail as well in our peripheral vision. Cones allow for us to see color, detail, light. And where are these located? Yep, Akil, good. They are located in the fovea, which is the point of central focus. Fovea, focus. Okay, classical conditioning and operant conditioning. They are similar, right, because they are both forms of associative learning, but classical conditioning is learning that two unrelated events predict each other. So it's automatic, it's unconscious, just learning the link. Learning that when there's lightning, there's going to be thunder right after that. That is classical conditioning. Okay, if you remember the easy button, okay, and then getting shot with the airsoft gun. And then operant conditioning is a form of associative learning where we learn to associate a behavior with an outcome, with a consequence, whether it is a reward or punishment, and that reward or punishment either increases or decreases a certain behavior. All right. Any questions on that? All right. Primacy versus recency. Okay. They are both part of the serial positioning effect. Okay. How we, what we remember if we're presented with a list or a length of time or something like that, what we tend to remember. But with primacy, okay, primacy is what? Tendency to remember what? First thing in a list. Okay, we remember the first thing in a list / length of time. All right, and then so prime. I don't know. I used to say remember one is a prime number, but I don't think one is a prime number. So is one a prime number? I never understood prime numbers. Okay. All right. Recency effect. Okay, we remember the last things in a list or a length of time. Yes, the recent one. Okay, we remember the most recent thing. All right, proactive interference and retroactive interference are obviously both types of what are called retrieval interferences. Where things get in the way. It's not forgetting. Okay, so one important thing here, guys, is if you get asked about these on an FRQ, and they like having these. There's probably on one of the FRQs. There's going to be something from the cognition memory unit. This is always a good guess. If you look at the list of like words that have come up the most on FRQs, which is in the student resources folder. The cognition unit, I believe, has the most. But one thing to remember with this is it is not forgetting. Right? It is where information blocks our ability to remember something, but it is still in our memory. All right, so proactive interference is when old information interferes with new information. Okay, so when you learn a new unit, you forget the older units. And retroactive interference is when new information So I'm sorry. My example I just gave was wrong. Okay, if like you remember the old units, but that you can on a test you can only you trying to remember stuff from Unit 8, but all you can think about is from Unit 1. Okay, new information interferes with old with the retrieval of old information. You learn a new unit, you forget the old one. What is the mnemonic to help you remember this one? Porn. Yep. Okay. Proactive. Old interferes with new. I'll put that. Proactive. Oh, crap. Here we go. Hey. So Rustin, calm down. All right, so implicit versus explicit memory. Both of these, the similarity between these two, both of these are types of what? Anyone? Well, yes, they are both types of memory, but specifically what type of memory? Long term. Yep. They are both types of long term storage. Implicit memory, though, is unconscious, automatic memory of how to do things slash procedural memory. Okay. It is also called non-declarative because you can't. These are things you can do, but you can't you're not retrieving them necessarily. They're just it's like tying your shoes. Okay, or language. Um, Anybody, where is a lot of this stored? In the cerebellum. And another area we didn't really ever, I mentioned it once, but another area called the basal ganglia. Explicit memory is is memory that we have conscious recollection. Learning language is explicit. Once we learn language, it actually becomes implicit. So sometimes things can go from explicit to implicit. This is memory that we have conscious recollection of. There are two types. There is semantic memory, which is our knowledge of just learned knowledge, word meanings, things like that. And episodic memory, which is life events, also called declarative. And this is for the most part stored in the cerebral cortex. Processed by the hippocampus, stored in the cerebral cortex. All right, we'll do a few more. Tell me if people are getting tired of this, if people are ready to go or whatnot, just tell me and I'll end whenever. Okay, algorithm versus heuristic. They are both problem solving techniques. All right, but with an algorithm is where we solve a problem doing what? Using a formula. Yep, using a formula. Go through every possible option. Right. Eventually, you get the if done correct. Right, and then a heuristic is basically like a rule of thumb. Okay, where rather than going through every possible option, we make a decisions based off of likelihood, prior experience, etc. Right? It is faster, but can be prone to errors because we're just using our own judgment. All right. The different types of heuristics, all right, representative and availability heuristics, these are both referred to as problematic heuristics. Representativeness heuristics, where we make a decision based off of how well something represents a concept in our mind, right? Meaning like how close to the prototype is it? Okay, we'll just use the teacher example, but if you have a teacher that is covered in tattoos or whatnot, okay, that might not fit in like your representativeness of what a teacher is, so therefore you might not respect them as a teacher or something like that. I mean, it'd be dumb. Okay, but just it essentially, like, stereotypes are a type of representativeness heuristic. um, Availability heuristics are where we judge likelihood based on how easily something comes to mind. Okay, so like if you hear about something on the news a lot, then we tend to think things are more common than they actually are. Things that we hear about a lot. All right, phoneme and morpheme. These are both parts of language. Phoneme is the smallest unit of sound in a word, such as the word, we have the word bat. Then it's the phonemes like b, a. At. Okay. That's not the right way of doing it, but that's the basics. I think like with like the old thing hooked on phonics, or if you spell something phonetically, you just spell it based off of the sounds rather than how it's actually spelled. And then morphemes are the smallest unit in a word that holds meaning. So, like prefixes and suffixes are both morphemes. Fluid intelligence is basically ability to think about novel concepts, creativity, thinking on difference to remember between phoneme and I you hear sound on a phone. Morpheme starts with an M, and morpheme is meaning. Ability to think about novel concepts, creativity, thinking on our feet. So, like problem solving. This gets worse as we get older. Crystallized intelligence is our knowledge of facts, language, things like that. This gets better as we age. All right, validity versus reliability. These are both parts of test construction. All right, validity is when is the test actually testing what it is supposed to. So, I mean, you're taking the AP exam next week. Okay, if they started asking a bunch of philosophical questions or whatnot on it, then that would not be valid. Okay, there is what is called content validity, which is the content legit? All right, and then predictive validity, which is it predicting what it is supposed to predict? Reliability. Does the test have I'm blanking on how to say this. Oh, does the test yield consistent results? Meaning, if you take a test multiple times, or if we let's say that we have a form A and a form B on a test, um, and form A the average is an 85, and form B the average is a 70. That would probably not be reliable, all right, because the two, obviously, one of them is like much harder than the other one. Okay. Um, with like the SAT and the ACT, both of those are highly reliable, meaning like even studying, you're not really going to do much better taking it a bunch of times. Personality tests, some are very reliable, like the Big Five. Big Five, if you take the Big Five multiple times, you're going to get basically the same personality traits, same levels of personality traits for each time. But if you take the Myers Briggs, or 16 personalities, which is the same thing, you're likely to get, you have a 50% chance of getting a different personality type after taking it a second time. So, okay. All right. Achievement tests versus aptitude tests. Those types of tests. Achievement test is measuring what has been learned. And aptitude is measuring potential ability. So, like the GRE, which you have to take to go to grad school, that is a test that measures your potential in grad school. Intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is when we are internally motivated to do something, meaning you want to you want to get a good grade on the test, right? So that you can feel good about yourself, so that you can feel accomplished or whatnot. When we're intrinsically motivated, we are doing it for simply liking to do something. Um, and extrinsic is when we are externally motivated to do something. All right, i.e., like getting a reward. Um, internal locus versus external locus. Okay, both of these deal with the sense of personal control and sense of personal control, which is our set how in control of our life we feel like we are. Having an internal locus of control, right, is having a sense of personal control over things. Okay. You have an impact on what happens to you. People who have an internal locus of control tend to be more optimistic, happier, and whatnot. Okay. You feel that if you study, you will do well on on the test. Having an external locus is having a poor sense of personal control. Things, events are outside of your control. The people with this tend to be more pessimistic. This would be like if everything is, if you just like leave all decision make, like you think like everything's up to God or whatever, that you don't have anything. That is an external locus of control. All right, I'll do a few more. Type A versus type B personality. We went over that recently. So type A is going to be uh, hardworking, aggressive, more prone to anger, etc. They're a higher risk of coronary heart disease. And type B personalities tend to be more easygoing. Read this. Type A is like uptight. Agonists versus antagonists are different ways that chemicals or drugs can affect neurotransmitters. Agonists are drugs or whatnot that stimulate the production of neurotransmitters, oftentimes by mimicking them. Okay, so like cocaine is an agonist for dopamine, heroin is an agonist for endorphins, so on and so forth. So they stimulate the production of those. All right. Antagonists are things that block production of a neurotransmitter, either by blocking the receptor site or blocking the axon or the axon terminal. For instance, antipsychotic drugs like haloperidol, thorazine, drugs that are used to treat um, drugs that are used to treat schizophrenia. Those block the production of dopamine. What would pain medicine be? That's a good question. I think it really depends, because my guess is a lot of times, sometimes they're both, but my guess is they would be antagonists, especially if they are localized, because they are going to be blocking the depends on where they affect as well, but blocking pain is the product of certain neurotransmitters sending that signal. So certain pain medicines are going to block the production of that neurotransmitter from that area. All right, the thalamus and the hypothalamus. Thalamus is the top of the brainstem, and it is the sensory switchboard. Sends sensory info to the correct area of the brain to be perceived. Except, anybody remember what sense does not go through the thalamus? Smell, yes. Hypothalamus is part of the limbic system. And this is the 4Fs, which is feeding, fighting, fleeing, and fornicating. So it's drives, right? Also controls the endocrine system. And just FYI, I have put this where it says list of confusing pairs explanation. Yeah, it controls body temperature as well, right? That's all drive. So drive reduction theory is all like hypothalamus stuff. But I have the blank one in the folder. I also have put this one in there as well. All right, endorphins and dopamine. These are both neurotransmitters. But endorphins, anybody want to tell us what do endorphins do? Hello? Yes. Okay. All right. Endorphins are the body's natural painkiller, referred to as the morphine within. And dopamine, who remembers what dopamine does? Yes. Okay. Reward, attention, motivated behavior, and certain motor movements. Dopamine and drugs, ADHD medication like Adderall and Vyvanse, that those work through dopaminergic receptors. All right, I'm going to do these last two, and then that'll be it for today. Pre-operational. All right, both stages of Piaget's cognitive. No, they are not. Never mind. Okay, pre-operational versus pre-conventional. They are both stages of development, but they deal with different things. Pre-operational is cognitive development. This is ages 2 to 6-ish. This is where they understand object permanence, do not understand conservation, and develop theory of mind. Pre-conventional is moral development. Who remembers who's the moral development guy? Anyone? No, not Lev Vygotsky. Lev Vygotsky's sociocultural. Yes, Kohlberg. Okay. Pre-conventional morality, morality and moral decision making based around reward and punishment. If you get a reward for something, then it's good. If you get punished for something, then it's bad. Okay. And then finally, normative informational versus normative social influence, both types of conformity. Informational social influence is when we often used in new situations where there's uncertainty. And this is basically where we use what the group is doing, right, as a guide for how we're supposed to act. So if you go to a new country, um, you'll use informational social influence to figure out how, if there's different ways to order stuff, hail a cab, things like that. That would be informational social influence. All right, normative social influence is following the group to fit in, um, not be ostracized, etc. Normative is more like friends like something, so you like it too. Normative, if we could actually, I did this when we went over it, but like informational social influence is basically bottom up processing. Normative social influence is basically top down processing. Okay, so I think that's good. We got a little bit less than half of those done. I will go in, even though I didn't go over them, I'll go in and I'll fill in those first couple ones for the 8A people that did not get it in class. Okay. All right. So my goal is to have another one of these on probably Thursday and then another one on Sunday. Um, I will do my best. Well, I will have to see on Monday, the Monday before the AP exam, what we can do. It'll be dependent upon my lacrosse schedule. Okay. All right.